Hello everyone, Ember Power here, and welcome back to New Deck Profile. In this video, I'm going to be going over my list for Magenzone Generator, which is a deck that's coming out in Scarlet and Violet. So, for the overview of the Generator box deck, it's based around the item card, Electricity Generator, that says, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 2 basic Lightning Energy cards, and attach them to your bench Lightning Pokemon in any way you like. Then you get to shuffle the remaining cards back into your deck. So, the deck requires you to play a decent amount of energy. I'm playing 13 currently in the list, but it does allow you to accelerate a decent amount of energy throughout the game, and in combination with Fluffy, this is just a really strong combo that allows you to set up multiple attackers. So Electricity Generator, I've got written over here, says opens the door to so many different lightning attackers. It's just an early build to test out some of the new attackers. So obviously feel free to experiment with the list, mix it up a bit. This is just an early build and kind of what I put together on a whim, but it is proving pretty decent in testing, so if you just want a building block to start with, then you've come to the right place. So Generator is wild in combination with a Fluffy. It's not unrealistic to take one hit KOs with Raichu V out of nowhere. So I'm only running one copy of Raichu V in the current deck list, but Raichu V is honestly an absolute menace with Generator. If you Generator and hit 2-3 energies, then that's already 180 damage guaranteed effectively with Raichu, and then that's not including manual attachments for the turn or using Fluffy. So very powerful combination. We also have Copycat in the deck. This was only in here because I thought Scarlet and Violet in the main set, they would reveal a better supporter to us that would kind of rival Research in a way, but they only revealed a Judge reprint and a Shauna reprint in the form of Youngster that says shuffle your hand to your deck, draw 5. I personally prefer Copycat because I don't run many copies of it, so which is, I guess, a bit of irony there. But Copycat just means that if our opponent isn't expecting it and they're drawing massive cards into their hand, like they're getting a massive hand size, then we can just shuffle a hand to our deck and draw a potentially really big hand. And typically our opponent's going to have 5 or 6 cards in their hand anyway, so Copycat seems like a pretty decent draw supporter post-rotation. So for Pokemon, we run 16. We have the 3-1-2 line of the Magenzone. This seems a little strange at first because the deck was supposed to be about Magenzone initially, but I decided to cut down on the Magenzone to make room for another Miraidon, so I think it's important that you're able to set up your Pokemon. So if you don't know what Magenzone does, it has 330 HP, and its first attack for a single lightning energy does 50 damage for each basic energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon, or just energy, I think. So just each energy attached to all your opponent's Pokemon. So if you have 3 energy, it's minimum doing 150, which is really solid, just allows you to do very efficient 2-hit KOs. And because you have 330 HP, you're never getting 1-hit KO'd outside of fighting decks, and even those decks will need at least 160 HP, 170 HP minimum to 1-hit KO your Magenzone. So very tanky boy, and then the second attack, Pulse Launcher for 2 lightning, does 220, and then you do 30 to yourself. So it's a very strong card, but unfortunately because it's a stage 2 Pokemon, I still have reservations about consistent setup, so I'm not playing a heavy line of Magenzone. Instead, it's more of a card that we build up on the bench. I'm using Magenzone a decent amount in testing. I usually go through about 2 or 3 in a game. Well, 2 in a game because there's only 2 copies in the deck. But so Magenzone, decent attacker and a good support Pokemon to have around. We also have Miraidon EX, one of the main legendaries from Scarlet and Violet, has the ability Tandem Unit that says, once during your turn, you may search your deck for up to 2 basic lightning Pokemon, put them onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. Also has the attack Photon Blaster for 2 lightning 1 colors, does 220, and during next turn this Pokemon can't attack. So just a very efficient attacker. Most of this deck revolves around taking these massive 1-2 KOs, 1-hit KOs or 2-hit KOs with either Raichu, Magenzone or Miraidon. And Miraidon just doing 220 is really nice. It means that Raichu only has to discard 1 energy, or Magenzone just needs the opponent to have 1 or 2 energy in play in order to follow up with a 2-hit KO. So very efficient damage, and also Tandem Unit just really helps with setting up the Pokemon so we can fight Magmites and our Mareeps very easily. Also an easy way of finding out a Raichu in the mid to late game if we need one. So we also play the Fluffy line. I was considering Ampharos EX in here at one point, but Ampharos EX needing 4 energy just seemed really expensive at the time, and I was like, okay, I just want to experiment with Generator, plus if you evolve into Ampharos, it takes away a Fluffy effectively, and I'd rather have room for Fluffy in this deck. So really, you could add Ampharos in here, but if you're going to add Ampharos, one thing I will say is just bulk up the Mareep line and remove the Magnezones or something. Just kind of build more towards Ampharos as opposed to Magenzone. I also have One copy of Raichu V. Having seen how busted this card is in testing, I really want to just focus on more of a Raichu V deck after this, probably cut the Magenzone line entirely, and then maybe go for a heavy Flaffy, heavy Generator, heavy Raichu V, and see where that takes me, because Fast Charge and Dynamic Spark, really good attackers, and Generator is just such a busted card, so do not sleep on Raichu V. If you don't have any Raichu V, I'd recommend picking up at least one, just so, if you don't end up building it, you can always trade it away, because this card will definitely see play in some capacity. So one Luminion V and one Radiant Greninja. I know Luminion V doesn't see a whole lot of play, but my theory about Luminion V is that most players will move away from Serena and into Boss as EX Pokemon become more popular. So they'll have to play a Boss's Orders, and because Boss's Orders is not effectively a draw supporter, what I'm trying to say is they're less likely to gust up your 2-prizer on the bench. Now, this obviously might not apply. They might just gust up Luminion because it's easier to KO. But if they're KOing Luminion and they're not 2-hit KOing Magenzone, that's obviously really good for you. It does go up 2 prize cards, but Magenzone also gives up 2 prize cards, so I'm okay with my opponent KOing Luminion as long as they're not really damaging my Pokemon. But Luminion is in the deck to add a bit more consistency, and it's also really good for finding out one-off Cheryl, which can be used to fully heal our evolution Pokemon. Coincidentally, the only evolution Pokemon we're ever attacking with is Magenzone. So because the attacks are for 1 lightning or 2 lightning, what we can do is essentially go manual attachment, do like massive damage with the first attack, then Luminion for Cheryl, or just play Cheryl from hand, heal all that damage, and then reattach. So great for 2-hit KOs and really good for Magenzone. So if you're playing a Magenzone Cheryl deck, I would recommend Luminion V. Also playing Radiant Greninja just because it has great draw synergy with Flaffy, discarding lightning energies to draw 2 cards, and it's just a pretty good card overall. Looking at the trainers, we play 31 trainers and then 13 basic lightning energy. I play 3 Professor's Research, just discard your hand, draw 7. Also play 3 Serena, 1 Boss, running a bit of a split because we will need to gust EX Pokemon. 3 Copycat. You can remove Copycat if you want. I was even trying out Ace Roller's Premonition at one point. You could probably add in maybe 1 or 2 Judge, I would say. You could cut like a Serena for a Judge, and then maybe use Copycat in combination with Youngster or something. Maybe that's like a decent draw supporter split. Then we see 1 Cheryl. I wouldn't play more than 1 Cheryl unless I was leaning more heavily into Magenzone, but it is just a really good supporter to have. 4 Nest Ball for consistency, 4 Ultra Ball for additional consistency. We don't want to discard too many resources, so that's why I didn't go for Serena, but 4 Ultra Ball, just really good for finding out our evolution Pokemon. We also play 4 Rare Candy so we can consistently hit Magenzone. Also play 4 Switch just to avoid any clunk ups. This list is obviously trying to be hyper consistent because it's still in early phases of testing, so I do like to play 4 of most cards just to try out and see how consistent they are. Also playing 4 Electricity Generator just to allow us to set up our Pokemon, and then 13 Basic Energy is how we're going with the generator. I would say if you're going to test out Electricity Generator, start with 13 or 14 energy minimum, and then try and experiment with 12 or less energy, because Max Elixir was a really good card back in the day, but that only looked at the top 6 and people still had to play like 12 plus energy. Electricity Generator is consistently hitting between 1 and 3 energy right now, so that's still really, really good. So if you can afford to play 13 or more energy, Electricity Generator, you probably won't go wrong. So some other cards to consider are Pachirisu, there's also a Polmot, a Judge, the Ampharos EX, Youngster, and Mesagoza Stadium. So the Pachirisu has the ability Electric Sacs, as his Pokemon can't be paralyzed, but the main attraction of Pachirisu is Group Discharge, which does 10 damage and then 20 more for each of your bench lightning Pokemon. Pachirisu could probably be a deck in its own right, but I just don't think the damage output is quite there with Pachirisu. Even if you start including tool cards like Define, Band, and Choice Belt, I don't think Pachirisu is doing nearly enough damage to keep up. But if our opponent, or in a future set, they most certainly will, guarantee it 100%, they will release a card that says, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's EX. Typically, we only play Raichu V and Magenzone and Miraidon to attack with, so we only have multiple prize card Roblox Pokemon, so Pachirisu could fill in that void. There was also a Polmot revealed from Scarlet and Violet, which we don't have an English translation for yet, or an English card I should say, but we do have a translation. Has the ability Charge Up or something, which allows you to, once in your turn, search your deck for lightning energy, attach it to Polmot, and then the attack for 2 lightning colors does 230, but you have to discard all the energy. So Polmot is a pretty decent stage 2 card. I would definitely like to try this out with Generator and Raichu at some point. I just don't think it's very good with Magenzone, so that's why I didn't include it in the list. Then we see Judge, which is an optional draw supporter, Youngster, another optional draw supporter, Ampharos EX, which I touched upon earlier, Electro Ball doing 60 damage, 1 lightning, just allowing you to KO an evolving basics, pretty decent. And then Lightning Tail for 3 energy. I did initially believe this was for 4 energy, but it's for 3 energy. Does 140, you may discard 2 energy, and if you do, this attack does 100 more. So you can do 240 base and knock out an evolving V Pokemon, or I guess an EX if you get a Defiant Band on there as well. But Ampharos EX, pretty solid card. I just didn't feel like there was enough room or placements for Ampharos EX. And then Mesa goes to Stadium saying, once during each player's turn, that player may flip a coin if they had to search your deck for Pokemon. It's kind of like a permanent Pokeball, and because this deck doesn't run any stadiums or tool cards that matter, I just thought it'd be an interesting stadium to maybe try out at some point down the line. So, thoughts after testing. The current list feels like 2 decks in 1, but still somehow remains consistent. This is largely thanks to the Raichu Generator combo, so the deck feels like it wants to be a Raichu deck at times, but then at the same time it wants to use Magenzone and tank with Cheryl. So I think if you lean into one more than the other, you'll end up with a far more consistent list somewhere down the line. But do you have any thoughts on Generator or the deck in general? If you do, let me know down below. And this has been Emma Power. Thank you for watching.